me. Can you introduce yourself as well, Bernard and Della?
Hi everyone, I'm Bernard Pokuba and I'm going to be a panelist for this round. All the best to all teams.
Hi everyone, I'm Dela Kwame. I'll be a panelist for this round. Good luck to your team.
Thank you so much, dear panelist. Again, Cap, kindly mute your mic. I don't know how I'm going to kick you here because it's totally distracting. We can't start the round if your mic is still unmuted because we can't hear, like we're not going to hear anyone smoothly and clearly. Yeah, and the voice background is literally yeah. Okay, thank you so much. You're not done. Okay, I hope OG, OO, and CG and CO is here and complete. Now, without further ado, to start the semi-finals, fire you guys. Good luck. Let's now call on Prime Minister. Here, here. Hello, Prime Minister.
Yeah, hi. So, is anyone keeping timestamps?
Hello. Can one of my panelists keep time? I think there's a time chat bot here in the Discord. I can't see text. Can any of my panelists do that? If not, I'll find ways.
All right. Do you mean timestamps in the test space?
Yeah. Can you?
All right.
Okay. Thank you, OC.
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Again, Prime Minister, here, here.
Hello, Chair. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible, but can
Hello.
you read yeah? Can you read the motion? I think you're somehow muffled.
No, I just want to be sure I'm in the right room. Like, I'm supposed to be opening opposition,
Wait,
or there's a
hold
problem.
on.
No,
What's your
DSM,
name?
you're not in this room. Sorry, let me just start that. DSM, you are in room Agago, not this room.
Right.
Room admin.
Yeah, let me just push you to your room.
Anton.
Great.
Yes. If you're ready, Prime Minister, you may start. Thanks.
Okay, just before Prime Minister starts, I'm just gonna be dropping you the timestamp, like the time command. Then you can just like start it yourself, the chair. That's okay.
Okay, thank you so yes, thank you so much for helping us.
I'm just waiting to see the chat, the time bot on the chat so that I can begin. Could we have the time, whatever, happening at the chat space instead of the text space? Oh yes, there we go. Awesome. So we're good to start. I'm audible. Yes. Can anyone hear me? Okay, cool. Awesome. So I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. A few things you're going to get from me is an understanding for what this debate largely requires and why we think it needs to exist within societal structures, especially for the context country that we've been given in the info slide. But even further, I think just to begin, we need to make some consensus that so that opposition bench does not make any weird arguments. Recognize that there are concessions within the debate. Suicide exists in both sides, right? So no team can start arguing whether suicide is good or bad within a debate. So since suicide exists on both sides, the winning metric becomes who best caters to the actors when in the process of suicide, be it both the person is committing the suicide, but at the same time, the people who are being left behind within, sorry? People who are being left behind within this entire process as a whole. So secondly, then we need to prove to you as side government that the best model to have within this debate is through the model of having this that one existing within societal structures. Context is that the earth is filled with a lot of like bad stuff that exists. The lottery of birth within societal structures is something that you largely have no control over, which means then majority of the people who largely are initiated for the euthanasia process are people who have chronic illnesses and no possibility of getting better, or people who are in a vegetative state or things like that, and there's no likelihood of them actually becoming better or things like that. Why this is important for you to understand is based off of the nature that your inability to have autonomy and independence when it comes to your body because of the disease that has currently plagued you, without you having an autonomy of choice whether you need to have this disease or not, it means then there's a necessity to actually prioritize autonomy of choice even on principle based off of this model. So if I prove to you that for us, we maximize autonomy of choice when it comes to having this source custard, then I think we win this debate. So even secondly, we think we need to offer them a principle of reparation at a point in time where they're directly harmed by the whole idea that they exist in society or things like that. We equally need to understand that the decision is not an instant decision or something that is made on the snap, which means then you cannot say that all of a sudden you'll want to change your mind or things like that. I think there's a lot of harm that you've currently faced within societal structures because of the disease that you're currently facing for you to make this decision, and it's justified on all fronts. Biggest arguments then that you get from side OG is that the idea of efficiency. We think there's a better efficiency model at a point in time where we have this cuspad existing. Why is it more efficient? We think 1, your inability to feel pain, 2, the fact that it is fast, and even 3, the fact that you're the one to make the decision to press the button and actively die. But even finally, the capacity that it's biodegradable, but even at the same time can act as a coffin in of itself. So efficiency is derived on 2 fronts. 1, for the person who's actively like committing this suicide in the first place, you actually have a safe, faster, smoother process for you. But then secondly, the people that you get to leave behind don't have to go through like weird costs, for example, buying your coffin or things like that for them to bury you. We think a lot of people who don't opt into this particular model because of the inability for people to bury them or things like that. So at a point in time where you don't leave a lot of burden for the people that you leave behind, we think this is a better model. Secondly, autonomy of choice. At a point in time where for euthanasia, someone else is the one pressing the drug into your system and for you to go through pain and even finally die, we think that's largely bad. At a point in time where you do not have autonomy over your body because of a disease, the capacity that you can make a choice for yourself to actively enter into this technology, press the button and begin the process of death, which is not even gonna be very long, we think this is a principle to maximize autonomy of choice for the person who's actively going through this process. Third argument you're going to get from me is the whole idea that we provide dignity for the person who's even going into death. Why is this important to understand within this debate? At a point in time where there's dignity for you and you like, say, for example, the nature of illnesses and these chronic illnesses is that 1, you do not have dignity in existence of life, which means the disease takes up every single part of your body. People disregard you and discriminate you within societal structures, which means you lack a capacity to have dignity when you are alive, which means then you need to have a better alternative for you when you are dying or things like that. We don't think euthanasia offers you this solvency at a point in time where you suffer or you go through pain, even in the process of death, which then means that our model model is far much better to accommodate these people because one, you have dignity in the process of death. You have a capacity to A, make a choice, but secondly, go through a painless, peaceful, and a very fast death. And we think that's important for you to understand within the debate. Then even fourthly, the idea where you reduce the emotional burden on the healthcare providers that exist within societal structures. For euthanasia, how it works is the person around you has to actually like confirm that you need to die. But even secondly, you need a loved one to actively press the liquid into your system and for you to die. We think this leaves them with a lot of guilt and a lot of regret at a point in time where they were part and parcel of you dying within societal structures, which then means then you need a better mechanism to actually care for these healthcare providers within societal structures. Where we think this is good is because A, you're the one who's the only person making this decision to die. Secondly, you're the only one who's initiating this process of death in and of itself. So we think we better accommodate people people who you get to leave behind at a point in time where they're not left with guilt or regret in that regard. They just mourn you or things like that. But even secondly, there's room for actualization for you to sorry, hey, if you're unmuting, please chill. There's room for you to actually actualize at a point in time where it's biodegradable, efficient for the environment because it decomposes or things like that. Then finally, the opt-out mechanism. We think in our side, you have a capacity to make a decision for yourself, whether you want to die or not. And at a point in time where you have like a peaceful death, we think we maximize intensity, we reduce the intensity of harm that would most likely exist within societal structures. What opposition teams cannot argue is, oh, manipulation of the system or a misuse of this particular product. Why can't this be an argument? Because euthanasia has existed in this country for the longest time possible, which then means the question cannot be that, oh, people are going to manipulate the system. I think there are already checks and balances that already exist within societal structures that would actively limit this from existing or things like that. We think then the best team that wins this debate is a team that actively proves to you that we best cater for the person who's committing this suicide. Why is it important for us to care for them? Because I think value of life exists regardless of whatever it is you're currently suffering from, which means then if you prioritize the person who's actively dying by giving them a capacity to die peacefully or at a point in time where they're dying without facing any harm, then I think we win this debate. Then final argument you're going to get from us is the idea of general happiness. We only achieve general happiness at a point in time where this source pad exists. Why do we think that is so? Because A, we have catered to the person who's actively making this decision to die. They have a capacity to make a decision for themselves, not face pain while they're dying, and it's very good for that to exist. Secondly, the whole idea of like the whole idea of the people who are left behind. There's a higher chance of them actually facing general happiness at a point in time where we take away the guilt and the whole idea of regret existing within societal structures. I think then we best offer this model that has A, efficiency, B, general happiness, 3, maximization of autonomy of choice, and even 3, the capacity of like having an opt-out mechanism for this particular people. And I think the mechanization for why we think these particular people need to have a maximization of autonomy of choice is something I already proved to you in my speech. We rest.
Hello, thank you for that fine speech, Prime Minister. Now to open the clash inside opposition, calling on leader of opposition.
Okay, am I audible?
Hello, you're audible.
Okay. Thanks. So a couple of things here. If you want to ask a POI, type exclusively in chat space. I'll be willing to take one POI. Probably and then my partner will take closing so that there is symmetric engagement. I think that's just the only rule. And congratulations to everybody. I wish I look. So I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Chair, there are a couple of things to note here. And because opening government in a bid to be extensive and burn material, they never did any comparison or they never did any impact analysis. And that's the problem with the matter. If you say that this is a benefit that exists on your own side, you need to weigh whether that benefit exists in status quo, or if it's principle, whether that principle is adhered to in status quo, and the extent to which the adherence on your own side differs from what is obtainable within status quo. This is crucial because they already say in their own speech that euthanasia exists and it's legalized in the vast majority of instances. So this is not a debate about euthanasia. It's about specifically Sarco Pods. What does this clarification mean? It means 3 things. One, when they talk about analysis about autonomy and why we need to maximize people's dignity, the maximization of autonomy, agency, and dignity already exists in status quo, insofar as most countries around the world that is developed recognizes things, the rights of people to suicide or the right of people to euthanasia. They need to then explain why Sarco Pods or is something that is very important or something that government should lend any kind of support to. But the second thing here is the argument as to why this is efficient doesn't necessarily matter, insofar as there are multiple government policies that always exist in status quo, and the question of the efficiency doesn't determine whether government should support this. This is very crucial within the context of this debate. But what's the second thing? The framing. And this is because they need to contextualize what support motions look like and what is required of them to defend on their own side. Per WDC manual and per debating standards, support motions require you to defend either why a specific agency, in this case being that it is a new policy or a new invention, well, why government should support it. It means then the question is whether government often supports policies in three ways: through political means, where they make policies for its existence; secondly, is through narrative means, where they push for its support through traditional media and social media platforms; the third is through economic models, where they support its existence and push money to its production. We think on our own side that it's principally unjustified for government to do this. And this starts the first extension or the first material within the speech. What's the first material here? The first material is why this is anti-governmental responsibility. Let's contextualize what governmental responsibility means within the context of this debate. State owes you an obligation for you to maximize your preferences under them, under their control. The second thing is that state has to ensure that the sort of happiness that you get is something that doesn't affect you as a person or affects your agency or your human dignity within that particular regard. It's the same reason why government is willing to place things like sin taxes, right? Where they place higher amount of taxes on things that are fatty foods or foods that would most essentially harm individuals within that particular regard. State already do this in status quo. It means then that if supports this, if government supports this either economically, politically, or otherwise, it simply means at that particular point in time that the maximization of people's preferences no longer exists, because it means that multiple amounts of individual would always be willing to opt into this particular mechanism and not enjoy those last moments that they have with their family. It means then that the last picture that their family is left with is a world where they enter into Sarco Pods and they ultimately die within that particular regard. Which means then that government, through her agency, causes irreparable harm to the person because the life is lost, but also irreparable harm to individuals that associate with them by virtue of family or other societal concepts within that particular regard. But the second thing here is the principle, and this directly engages their case of agency, human dignity, and all the rest of that. Because for you to maximize agency, consent has to exist a priori. What are the two things that make up consent? One, the individual that takes that decision is like they take that decision out of voluntariness, but also secondly, it is an informed decision. Note that Sarco Pods, when government supports it, it means that those two constituents are not existent. Why is this the case? When there is a governmental support for a new action or for a new mechanism, it means that states, being the arbiter of legitimacy, considers this moral, which means that there is now an incentive for more people to buy into the existence of Sarco Pods, which means two things. It means that given that most individuals that will most likely opt into this are individuals that are suffering or have terminal illnesses, they now have more incentive to opt into it easier because there is now an existent support for this particular mechanism. It is no longer the current model where they have to negotiate with their doctors and decide whether they really want these things in that particular regard, which means on their own side, you have a subversion of doctor and patient relationship at the end of the day. It means then that all of their principle of agency and autonomy never materialize insofar as consent doesn't exist. What is the third thing here? Let's talk about the pragmatic harms in terms of when you implement this policy. But before I speak any further, for the sake of engagement, shoot your POI if you have any.
Why can't you talk to your doctor before you go into the Sarco Pod?
Can you repeat your question?
Why can't you ask your doctor to go into the Sarco Pod and just ask him if it's a good idea or not?
Okay, this is a very shitty thing. I'm not going to reply that. Let's talk about the third thing, the pragmatic harm of consent. The pragmatic harm when these things are done. Note, the reason why billionaires are willing to dole out huge amounts of money for grants and researches is when they know there is an existent high level of suffering. This means, in principle, that suffering needs to exist so that individuals can have an incentive to provide happiness for other individuals that suffer in status quo. Why is this crucial? If there is a governmental support for this, it means that there is a push in for the production of sarcopods, but also there is a narrative that governmental agencies support this, which means two things. There will be a reduced amount of suffering in status quo because individuals automatically now get cancer and they weigh, oh, well, I'm going to spend millions of dollars or thousands of dollars in chemotherapy and remission. It's better for me to just go into a sarcopod and save my family the suffering, the tears, and the money they are going to waste. Which means at that particular point in time, suffering no longer exists. And the incentive for billionaires to dole out money for research and other pharmaceutical purposes no longer exists on their own side, or it is greatly mitigated, which means that things like terminal illnesses like cancer and all the rest of them don't get like better practical results within that particular regard, which means that government by logical extension also loses their legitimacy insofar as like the practical incentives for people to dole out money no longer exist, which is the existence or the presence of suffering. The last thing here in terms of like extension material I'm going to talk about is the narrative. When there is a governmental support, either through traditional means of media or social media platforms, three things happen. One is that younger members of the society who face things like psychological problems, like terminal health issues, are now incentivized to take up this option. Note, the reason why this is true is because there is no way to empirically measure the amount of suffering that someone who is going through AIDS and someone who is going through cancer faces, right? Which means at that particular point in time, given that there is no empirical way to measure it, individuals now have an incentive to opt into this particular mechanism at a point in time where they feel they suffer from any particular level of mental or psychological or physical illness. Comparatively on their own side, where there is no support, it means then that you are more able to evaluate for a longer period of time, but also secondly, there is better like doctor-patient relationship, and you just don't decide, oh, I need to do this because the suffering I'm facing is just too much. All of these things they need to address in terms of principle, but also notice at this particular point that all of the principles that exist on their own side never materializes insofar there is no existence of state responsibility, but also the absence of consent. For all these reasons, proud to oppose.
Thank you for that fine speech, leader of opposition. Now to conclude the side of opening government, may I now call on DPM. Here. Hello, DPM. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, Johnson is on the call. That's very good. I'm happy about that. Johnson. Can I please have the timer in the chat space? I'm not seeing the timer. I'll start after I see the timer. The timer is not there. Okay. Oh, the timer is now
Hello.
there.
Yeah,
Yes.
hello. I'll be starting the timer once you start.
Okay. There is no problem with that. We're good. Okay. So again, Johnson. Anyways, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. The problem with like opening opposition is I don't know how to say it. They are very uncharitable and they do this debate in a very weird way. They come to the debate and they engage with, oh, this is why Sarcoped is bad. Fine. Assume that we agree that all their things are actually correct and their case is actually valid. What they don't get is that their alternative is actually worse. So the debate here becomes if a patient was going to die either way, if a person was going to die either way, what option do they best choose? Either do it through assisted suicide or get into the sarcopod. Understand this person is going to die regardless. They can't fear out that, oh, you spent last time with your family or you talked to, like, all those things have been done. You've already talking to your doctor, you've already spent time with your family. Now a matter of should you do it with someone else or should you do it alone? I think that in itself was the debate. The alternative is clear from Mercy's speech. Assisted suicide still exists. That means this person is still going to die either way. So you need to prove why you need to push more people there. What are the three engagement metrics that you have to give them to you? They tell you that number one, state is going to evade responsibility and do not do things like cure cancer, whatnot. But somehow in their world, when people still have avenues to assisted suicide, state will now have the incentive to cure cancer. We think that's particularly flawed and doesn't make sense logically because state will always still have an incentive to make sure that people don't get cancer, regardless of whether people are opting into Sarco Pod or assisted suicide. The second thing that you get is that, you can't talk to your family, you can't talk to your doctor, but in assisted suicide, you can. I think that's a lie because you can still talk to your family and still talk to your doctor. Then afterwards, you know that this is your last minute of dying, so you still go to the point after talking to them. We think you have greater autonomy on our side. But thirdly, they tell you that, you're going to reduce suffering because people will just be like, chemotherapy is expensive, then Sarco Pod, and they go die. People can also go like, chemotherapy is expensive, then assisted suicide, and they go die. But even if you are being charitable and you believe their case that is actually very valid and they are making sense, what's the problem with people not suffering? We don't understand the sole need of glorifying suffering and humanity needs to suffer. We don't see why that's particularly beneficial. We argue the idea of dignified death and we're going to argue it again. For context, we think we've already shown you that the alternative they need to defend on their side is assisted suicide. So this person is going to die in either way. But secondly, they can't say, we are going to coerce people into this or push them into this because government is into this. Because government can equally just promote assisted suicide and it will still push people into assisted suicide and coerce people into this. We think that's very symmetrical. But thirdly, we don't get this whole idea of like glorified suffering. Five extensions, and we're going to then start our debate. Firstly, understand that this is a matter of resuscitation. Understand that from Mercy's speech, you get the idea of autonomy maximization. The intuition pump is simple. In one world, you're making money, you're making billions of dollars with someone else. We think you don't have that much autonomy. Yes, you're making it through your own means, and yes, you have some chase. But if you have an alternative to do it only by yourself, we think that in itself, that means autonomy is maximized. We are not disagreeing that autonomy does not exist. We are just saying on our side, there's a greater autonomy in better agency because this is fully independent from you, but you're going to impact this later on. What's the first thing that we get from my speech? The idea of dignified death. What you get from Mercy is that this death is going to be dignified because it's painless and it's fast. Two extensions to this. We say that death ought to be a private experience. The Sarco Pod in itself provides a greater degree of privacy. That means individuals can choose a place where they want to die or where they want to die. We think that in itself means that you go away with the noise, the involvement of like external parties like doctors, family, legal representatives, and all these other things make death a public and potentially a more stressful experience. We think death is more dignified if it's private. That's like the first thing that you get from our side. But secondly, we think death is more peaceful if it's private, and that also aids as an analysis to dignity. We think that in itself, you get dignified death on our side. I think that's something you ought to appreciate. Mercy tells you how there's no type of baby just born into this life you don't consent to. The extent where you are going to go out and you opt out of life, we think that in itself needs to be have some sort of human dignity into it. We provide a better case to that. We also saw how in the comparative there'll be so many lawyers, doctors, family members, and all these other things, which we think it makes that experience. We are the first comparative team to cap. Secondly, we think that this whole idea is that the Sarco Pod is a quite cost-effective case. Mercy argues from the point of people of how it will save the families from like planning your deaths and all these other things. You get that analysis better. What's the extension from my side? We say that because in itself, that means you are no longer going to use drugs, you're no longer going to use like medical facilities and clinic fees, like paying legal assistance so that lawyers are there and all these other things. We think that in itself means you save money. We think that's something that we appreciate. If you're going to die either way, why spend more money on it? But secondly, we think that in itself, because you're going to serve as a coffin, that means you use the money that you're going to buy your coffin to facilitate your death. We think that in itself means that you save money. Saving money is important for your future generations, for your kids, for people who are not sick. Understand, this debate is particularly for people who are going to die either way, people with terminal illness, people with cancer, and all these other things. Yes, two more things then. Yes, so I'll engage.
Okay, from CEO, simple Takura. With the press of a button, I died without my family knowing. How is the trauma which is going to be inflicted upon them be reduced, considering that you're saying consent?
Why are you guys getting these things that your family will not know that you're going to die? No, you are going to tell your family that you're going to die. Like, if you care about the trauma of your family to begin with. So in the event that you don't tell them, that means this trauma argument is not even weighted because you don't love them enough. You're just uncomparative. Anyways, fourth extension, the idea of consent maximization. This is piggy banking on Mercy's case as well. We think that the pod in itself eliminates the risk of coercion or accidental death. How so? 3 levels of analysis. Mercy tells you the idea of autonomy of how, because these individuals get to do these things by themselves. That means autonomy is greater maximized, so that the consent we think we outclass them, or the comparative way which is assisted suicide. But secondly, just to make it clear, we think the requirement of you to push a button adds an extra level of assurance that makes you sure that you use a voluntary and a conscious consent. But secondly, we think on a comparative, on the other side, there are so many doctors and there are so many legal lawyers and all this stuff. Potential people being involved, like blurs the line of consent. You don't even know whether the doctor suggested that you need to kill yourself. You get this from like side, and say, the doctor is supposed to tell you to kill yourself. We think that does not maximize consent. You might be coerced to this. We think potential, not even like coercion is so. Potential of coercion exists greater on their side because there are so many people involved. On our side, there's no that potential because it's an individual decision. We think death ought to be one. We think consent maximization is something that you get from our side, just to make sure that closing doesn't have an extension. We're just going to argue environmental impact. We think that in itself, we're going to preserve the environment. How so? Because I think traditional methods of suicide often require like long, devious processes that have so many chemicals. Maybe you're going to cremate yourself. Maybe you're going to dig around a hole, destroy biodegradation, and all these other things. We think the pod in itself is environmental friendly because it gives like nutrients to the soil because it's biodegradable and all these other things. We think that in itself is a better alternative if you care about the environment, generally speaking. What do you get from my case? Understand that you are the only comparative team here. Is not. They're just giving you harms and benefits, but they don't show you why the harms are like weight on their side. We tell you that number 1, this pod in itself gives a dignified death. Number 2, cost effective. Number 3, consent maximization. Number 4, the idea of regret and like moral weight on the individuals who are going to kill you. And number 5, environment. Yes, never been proud. See you in the final.
Thank you so much for that fine speech, DPM. Now, to conclude the opening houses and the opposition side, may I now call on the DLO.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. I'm going to be taking POIs in the text space. If you have a POI, please do not unmute your mic for any reason whatsoever. Do not unmute your mic. I am looking at the text space. If you have anyone, just drop your POI there. If I don't take you, it means I don't want to. But I'm going to definitely prioritize taking a POI from closing government anyways. Given that, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. This debate is not a comparative between Sarco Pod and assisted suicide, because opening government makes it look like on our side we have to defend assisted suicide. That's not the motion. It's not a comparative between these two. It's a support motion. And what do you do in support motions? In support motions, what Gov teams need to defend is the metric for which they support, but secondly, who is supporting and whether the person supporting is right to support in the way for which they claim. What we have to defend on UP is simple. We don't support the usage of Sarco Pod. So we are at liberty to argue in extension that even if Sarco Pod is an extension or a representation of assisted suicide, that we probably do not support it also. I don't think they have to push us to defend assisted suicide like opening government wants to do. They claim that suicide exists on both sides of the house. We agree because anyone can literally take their life on any side of the house. This is a debate about interrogating whether or not states should support the use of Sarco Pod. But more importantly, this debate does not say that we support the usage of Sarco Pod in Switzerland. So it's not like it's in a specific demography. And there on their side, they not also push it to make us think that that's where the debate is happening. It's safe to say it's an open vacuum. So we need to interrogate why we don't support the usage of Sarco Pod generally and all of that. Let me respond to opening government. The first thing opening government says is people need to have dignified deaths and peaceful deaths. There's a problem with this in 2 ways. The first is, note that euthanasia is a painless assisted death in status quo, because I don't get why they are all making it look like their word is novel. In status quo,
People have pills that they are given in instances where places where euthanasia is legal that is painless. Maybe it doesn't happen in a minute like Sarco Pod would do, but it also guarantees painless death like their claim. This means that their analysis and their case on pain isn't exclusive to them, given that it's a benefit that exists in status quo either ways. But secondly, the idea of a dignified death does not just mean that state needs to support people, giving them an avenue to take their life. I'm going to explain in extension why that's specifically bad, because the analogy does not make sense that we need to support people who have terminal illness to have dignified deaths in themselves. I don't think it makes sense, especially because it's states doing this in status quo. The next thing they claim is that our world is cost effective. Bomber, in status quo, euthanasias are also not as costly as they claim it to be. So they need to prove an exclusive mechanism on their word. Again, I don't think anything is going to argue that you don't have such painless deaths in status quo anyway. I think there was a burden for them to prove why their word is so unique for us to buy the analogy. The next thing they talk about is about autonomy. People need to have autonomy over their body, and their word legitimizes autonomy. If they claim that the comparative is euthanasia or assisted deaths in status quo, it means autonomy exists regardless in either side of the house. I don't see how Sarco Pod maximizes human autonomy if people can still partake in euthanasia in status quo anyways. But the problem with the analogy on autonomy is that it is premised on consent. We say that the people who are most likely going to want to use Sarco Pod, or the people who are most likely going to want to commit suicide, are people who are not in the right mental state to make an informed decision to take their life. That is why people argue against things like euthanasia, that you do not have the capacity to decide whether you really do not want to live anymore, because those decisions are made because of the condition you find yourself in. Maybe because you pity your family members who have spent a lot of money trying to resuscitate your life, but also because you are in pain, maybe because you're having cancer for how many years, or you've been in coma. We don't think those individuals have the capacity to make choice and to consent in the way for which they claim. Therefore, the consent on their side is not absolute and is not something that we are more likely going to support. The last thing they talk about is environmental impact, because they want to shut out closing government. I think that's a lazy argument to run anyways, because I don't think there is any environmental harm relatively to people taking their lives exclusively. Let's go on to why we beat any golf team. There are three questions that needs to be weighed in this debate. The first is, what are the conditions through which suicide exists? I think this is very important, because why do states support suicide, or why is state more likely going to legitimize it? It is premised on making a rational choice to end your life. This is bad because no happy person wants to end their life. People who are more willing to opt into taking suicide are either people in pain, people that terminally have a problem, or people that just feel unhappy about their life. The problem is, the rationale for overcoming the lottery of births is that you want to now consent to a life that truly matches your choice. If the conditions under which that decision is made does not truly match your preference, we think it is not right consent to make in the first place. I'm going to explain this principle in a couple of minutes. Closing the government, shoot your POI.
Very simple, yeah. We still don't understand why you would not want pain alleviation at a point where we both agree suicide is a thing that will happen as a last resort. What's so bad about alleviating your pain?
I'm coming to that. So let's talk about the principle here. The idea, the reason why people want to commit suicide is because they want to make a rational choice to end their life because they don't have a better life. We think the flip, that is, when you die, there needs to be a guarantee of a better life, because the opt-out that you are choosing to make is premised on the fact that you don't want the current life you live in, which means you want a better life. If the conditions under which that decision is made does not guarantee people's rationality and preference, we think it is a principally unfair choice to make, and we cannot call it through consent, because the opt out is not really rational or viable. So even if you prove that the current conditions of people which allows them to make those rational choices to opt out of life exist, we think the flip is not guaranteed and the better life they claim doesn't exist on their side of the house. The last thing that responds to their POI is, even if we have to support suicide, we don't think state needs to establish structures that makes it easy to access. We think even if in the best case where you need to do that, suicide should not be easy to access. We don't support Sarco Pod because it makes things easy. I think state has an obligation to protect people. When state supports Sarco Pod through whatever means for which they do that, state just legitimizes the idea that if you are terminally ill, if you feel bad whatsoever, this is a metric for which to opt out of your life. State doesn't have that obligation. And given that state is the one supporting which that metric is built upon, we think it is wrong. Principally, we don't support it because the flip is worse off. Statistically, we don't think state is in the right capacity to do that anyways, given that they have a specific responsibility to people. Proud to oppose.
Thank you so much for that speech, Deal O. Now to open the closing half, may I now call on member of the government.
Give me a sec. Let me get some water. But I hope I am audible. Just confirm for me,
Yes,
Chair.
yes, you're audible. I think you can have seconds to get your water, then you'll go back here so that we can start the semester.
Are you also going to get water? I think I'm. Huh. Is the chair here? Chair, you around? Can you guys hear me?
Hello. Yes, yes, you're
Oh,
audible.
just quick shout out for Bella, my partner who keeps, fighting tooth and nail at 3 a.m. It said she's gonna finish this tournament by like 4 a.m. where she is. But thank you for doing the tournament and for the commitment. Super proud of you. Uh, yeah, let's just keep doing what we're doing. And for everyone who's watching, hope you enjoy it. Um, and we have a great debate ahead. For PI preferences, I prefer verbal PIs, so you'll just unmute when you're ready and you'll tell me PI. Anytime from the second minute is good enough. All right. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, I think a few things are missing. So first of all, I'll characterize the debate again because CG is the only side that's going to win the debate. We need to understand the context of today's world. This is a world where individuals have a short life, and in this short life, you already have challenges that are more likely to kill you. And sometimes this short life that you think is good ends up becoming bad. So ideally, you and your goals in society come to a dead halt. You cannot contribute to society, you cannot contribute to your family, and when you do, all you do is cause pain. We think then life should be measured at a point where the quality and quantity is present so that you justify either the need for the euthanasia or not. We think sometimes death is a relief in itself because look, at a point whereby you're eating in your bed, shitting in your bed, and peeing where you eat. At the same time, you are unable to actively just enjoy the works of life. I think this becomes a problem. At a point where you have been pronounced dead, we think the only thing we can give you control over, because life has taken away every single bit of control from you, such as the lottery of birth, the only point to control now that we can give someone is the control of how they want a way out. So sometimes you're looking for an outcome, and the outcome is the only way outcome you need is a way out. So what ideally is our metric of support, which is something that we've not gotten from opening, and now we co-opt their arguments after providing these metrics. We would support this as the state financially. Why is this the case? It means we make it affordable for individuals by subsidizing the cost or even taking away the cost of the death itself, regardless of whether the coffin is a thing they're about. We think this is far much better because at least creating access to the option is now seen everywhere. Because euthanasia, though they don't tell you, is normally quite expensive and something that most people may not afford after paying all the medical treatment that people have. The second metric that we would want to do to support the idea of the Sarco Pod is creating awareness. Why? We think opposition, ideally categorically, I want to lock them out by saying this. We think creating awareness of the decision itself and the appearance of the decision and how it works would be better because now people are able to make more informed decisions. Notice that ideally the point of consent where you normally think of euthanasia and things like this is a point where you're not ideally a vegetable, you've just been pronounced terminally ill. We think it's justified for you to create awareness of this thing as an option so that you're not caught at a point where you're a vegetable and life is becoming extremely difficult for you and your loved ones. We think this is also far much better because people get to understand the gravity of these things. So opposition now cannot argue that this technology will be abused. This technology is not like going to be abused. We think human beings value their lives and they're rational enough to make decisions that do not harm them. So ideally, whoever wins this debate needs to prove a tipping point where you solve the pain of the individuals that are suffering and ideally make it more palatable for those who lose the individual that they are coming, that they're ideally, for those who lose the individual who will die as a result of the Sarco Pod. So who are the actors in this debate? There's a sick person, someone who's suffering extreme pain. All the painkillers in the world cannot help him. No morphine, fentanyl, or pethidine or any other form of drug can help these individuals because at the point where they are at, their fate is already sealed. We think then the fact that they're terminally ill means that they were going to die anyway, and that's something Takura says. We think that's far much better because at the end of the day, death was present. So it's not like the state is taking away your life. Notice the life was already being taken away by the universe itself. Second thing that people are not recognizing is the doctor and family. Because look at it, panel. At a point where you don't actively look at the sarcopod as a point of relief, it then means that the alternative and opposition is you give people a burden. And what burden is there? You force them to make a decision about your life at a point where life becomes bad. We think this individual should be the one to make the decision, and it's possible. People do sign do not resuscitate forms in hospital at a point where they know they're extremely sick. So it's not like you're sick physically and all of a sudden you lose your senses. That case from opening opposition is completely irrational and illogical. We think then, even at a point where you're sick and you feel like the choice is unfair, it would make things extremely worse on their end because at least on our side, we give you a fair shot of at least deciding how you want to die, not leaving you to die in anguish or pain. Alleviation of suffering only by a margin is something that we and only us can afford in this debate. Notice, the reason why it's also important to consider these individuals is that they get vindication. So ideally, they're not at fault for anything that happens, making it extremely easier for them to live their lives even after you go. The third thing also, other than that, is that you lessen things like repercussions, where the hospital now is getting sued after the person has died at a point where they made a decision like this, and people now feel like it's unjustified. Now, this time, you're the one at the helm. We think this debate, especially from CG, is one because we get to control the one thing humanity has never had control over, and that is death. Notice, you are able to actively choose how you want to go, and it's painless. You're not being forced into that corner. You actually have the choice. So the choice that OO is talking about on our side at a point whereby the individual now is no longer liable for is no longer at the at the mercy of the universe, and when it decides to take you. Yes, take your POI quickly.
So the problem is you assume you give unique benefits that don't exist in status quo. But in status quo, people can still have control over how they want to take their life in hospital. Most times, it's not like you are giving life back. Your benefit isn't so unique. You need to be charitable enough.
What brings me then to the next argument. Look, first of all, the necessity, and this is our disassociation and our different way up from our opening. I think we are doing this out of necessity. There is a need at this point to at least create some semblance of care, even if it means reducing the pain that you incur when you die. That's at least something that is necessary because it wasn't present before. The euthanasia methods that are present today are all painful. So it means then you suffer an amount of pain. We think it's necessary for you to do this because one, you alleviate pain on three people. One, the patient himself, two, the loved ones, and three, the doctors. All these people are ideally given a chance to actively control this, and the doctors and the patient's relatives are not at fault. Secondly, it becomes extremely necessary because state involvement is the only way you get better outcome. Why? At a point where you're noticing that too many people are dying as a result of the Sarco Pod and you have data, the state now is inclined to fund research for the particular disease that is actively killing people and hasten the thing. Why? This thing has been state approved, meaning it has the legitimacy that the state knows about this thing as an option and the viability. This is far much better because even the pharmaceutical companies now have to be pushed by the state, and you have collaborations to solve epidemics and pandemics and problems that arise. We don't think people will just want to die simply because death is something that's an option. That's not how things work. That's why Mavi is here debate. You prioritize the things you need and then think about the future later. At this point, the only thing we need to prioritize as CG is the lives of the individuals by giving them the choice to actively say when they want to quit. With that, I rest.
Thank you for that kind speech, member of the government. Now, to start the closing half on opposition, may I now call on member of opposition? Just to be clear, who's the one who left? Is that a speaker or I don't know. I can see. I just knew someone left. If that's not a speaker, then that shouldn't be a problem. Now to call on member of opposition. Here.
Am I clearly audible?
Yes, hello, you're audible.
It's a better to take one POI, preferably within my 5 minutes. So I will. So if you have a
Hello. Hello.
can you hear me?
I think you're yeah. I think you're kind of muffled. Can you read the motion?
Can I read the motion?
Yes.
Is
Is she audible to others?
the usage of the Sarco Pod. Is that better?
So can you wait, hold on.
Can I just connect and rejoin?
I don't know if if it is a mic problem or like a volume problem. One, you are not clearly audible. Secondly, I can hear you, but it's not.
I think I'll disconnect, then I'll reconnect again, and then someone else could tell me if I'm still muffled.
Yes, please, for stability. Thank you. Hello for my co-panelists. If you're audible on your end.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible. Thank you so much.
I think I've stated my POI. So I'll just put up the chat again. Please do not badger me at any given point within my speech, or else I will not take you. But if at around 5:15 um I don't seem to be taking any POIs, please just unmute and say POI once, just once, and I'll see if I'll pause and take you. Otherwise, I will be starting. Just give me a
So
second.
last apology. Can you speak closer to your mic?
Is this better?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
better. Thank you.
Okay. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Oh, I didn't set my timer. Sorry, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so the reason why both government benches are out of this debate, and this is something OO calls OG out for. I don't understand why CG comes and does the exact same thing, right? We think this debate is specifically about this Sacropod on why the government should support this. We think even within OG's own characterization, PM says within her speech that we can see that euthanasia exists in both worlds. It's unclear why CG comes to run analysis on things such as choice, things such as an opt-out for suffering. We think those things, like just the idea of like having individuals be able to kill themselves, to the extent that the motion itself says it's been legalized, are not like exclusive benefits to their side. We don't think that can work within this debate, right? So we'll give you 3 extensions within this debate, particularly from CO, and I'll analyze to you why like CO is the best side within, right? But firstly, I think we need to engage the nuance of this debate, right? This debate is particularly about the usage of this Sarco Pod, right? So to the extent that euthanasia has been legalized, it exists on both worlds. And I just have to do this because like teams keep, there seems to be like an unnecessary like confusion within the debate. To the extent that euthanasia exists in both worlds, right? It means then government needs to defend the exclusive benefit that comes with supporting like this means of allowing individuals to take their own lives, right? And why this is bad. First extension from closing opposition. It's the idea that you risk the glamour. Okay, I'll just flag the extensions. Firstly, the idea that you risk the glamorization of death. Secondly, the idea that you create a disproportionate favor for the option of death within individuals who are like suicidal who are considering the option of death. But thirdly, it's the idea that you reduce the capacity of status quo mechanisms to be able to persuade people out of death. We think it's uncharitable, one, for opening government to confine this debate within the framework of like individuals who are on the extreme end who probably want to kill themselves. We think it's even worse for closing government to make this debate uniquely about people who are terminally ill without providing any exclusive like benefit on why these are the most important individuals within the debate. But beyond that, they refuse also to defend any comparative harm, that any societal harm that might arise from this. We think debates have to be comparative. We'll take them at their best case. Firstly, the disproportionate favor for the option of death, right? We'll analyze to you why choice is coerced. We'll analyze to you how individuals necessarily work and why the specific nuance of the Sarco Pod makes this worse for individuals, right? At the point in which, and if we buy government's case, which is to say that this support mechanism works, meaning you have narratives around this and the state uses its power machine to be able to propagate this message to people and they buy it, it means, understand, the way individuals who are probably considering death work, right, is that there's a continuous dissonance that exists within the minds of these individuals between killing themselves and remaining alive. This probably looks like the desire for death becoming as extreme in highly tense situations at the point in which you feel there's a spiral and things are going really bad. But we think this desire probably eases up to the extent that things get better, right? And all of those things, right? What it tells you, but these individuals are like, they are like at the break and all of these things. We don't think that's necessarily true. We think this characterization responds to OG. The risk you then create uniquely with the Sarco Pod, and understand like opposition side is the only side that like deals with the nuance of the Sarco Pod, particularly closing opposition, is that you create a disproportionate preference for the option of death. The reason why this is true is because you disrupt this cycle of decision making within individuals. You disrupt this dissonance because if you buy government, which is to say support is existential and it works, it means that you make it more likely that individuals within these high tension seasons are less likely to consider any other options, to the extent that you sell to them like a narrative about a painless and a very, very fast and very efficient, if you buy opening government, means of killing themselves. We think it's particularly bad for this thing to exist. It's bad to induce this harm within individuals. This is logically prior to anything you get within opening half. But secondly, if this support works as well as OG claims, just the idea that it coerces your preference and it makes this more likely, we think this is bad. But second extension, right? The idea that you create the glamorization of death. Two nuances within the Sarco Pod itself that make it like very, very like preferable for this particular thing to exist in society. One, it's painless, it's fast. It's very, very likely that capitalistic structures have an incentive to exploit this thing. The reason why this is true is the precedent that exists within society for things such as anxiety medication. Understand, even if these sorts of things are like legalized within society, capitalistic structures have an incentive to like sell these things. We see this happen on TikTok every single day when influencers pull up trying to coerce like impressionable children to just buy into anxiety medication. The reason why this is true with the precedent and just taking away the skepticism that comes with the idea of a lengthy death. Understand, within pop culture, just within things such as movies, right? The idea that I have a lengthy death is something which probably scares me. And if you buy CG's characterization which is to say that euthanasia options in status quo and in the world which opposition is defending are probably painful, you remove the dissuading power of one, this pain or this lengthiness of death, which like keeps individuals from wanting to have a mass opt-in into death. And this is what opening opposition don't prove to you within their case, right? Because they just tell you that you coerce the choice of individuals to be able to opt into this thing. They don't analyze to you how necessarily this coercion happens, to the extent that it's likely that individuals, one, the individuals who are in the middle, individuals who have good days and bad days, probably buy into this thing. But secondly, it makes it much more likely that individuals who are suicidal end up killing themselves, like in the first place, without and like going through a lot of extents of engaging the existing mechanisms within status quo to find help. We think this is very, very bad. The debate from closing opposition, one, engages the nuance of the Sarco Pod, but secondly, it engages the nuance of just how individuals think and their decision-making calculus, which makes it prior to any analysis of the state, because understand that the state is formed off of the preferences of the individual and the maximization of utility and all of these things, and just to represent the interest of the people. It means to the extent that we analyze to you how people necessarily behave and the societal harms that come with this, we think all of this material is logically prior to anything that you get in opening half, right? I'll engage opening government before I finish. They say, but look, this is efficient, this is autonomous, and all of these things. It's unclear why, like this nuance exists only for your side. I think already go into that. The only thing they probably talk about that's valuable in this debate is the idea that you alleviate the tension within the person who kills you from killing you, right? And all of these things. We think even the person who created the Sarco Pod, the people who are with you when you sign this consent form, who are still aware that you're going to kill yourself, we don't think this is anything exclusive within their side. Or don't respond to this. We respond to this from closing opposition by saying, to the extent that there's still an awareness within other individuals that to some extent complicit in your own death by creating this machine, by allowing you to continue to exist within this machine, we think they're still complicit. It's unclear why this is the most important thing within this debate from opening government. My partner will analyze things such as how you allow capitalists to take what the leverage of this thing, and how you reduce the capacity of status quo to persuade people to not kill themselves, and why that's something that's probably important in this debate. I've never been prouder to oppose.
Thank you for that speech, member of opposition. Now to conclude the closing half, may I call on government whip here.
Okay. So I'll take for both your eyes, and my time will start. Concluding this debate, why CG should be the winning team. First of all, with a comparison with our upper house, the extension that we provide here is that we tell you the metric that we provide in supporting. So we tell you we provide the two support, which is my member has clarified, with financial and awareness. The two is important, and it can make our case stronger when we tell you that the government provides you with financial support when people are more affordable to this medicine, when people who actually are in need with this Sarco Pod can be able to afford them. And so that in this case, it ensures that our policy can be taken in use because people are accessible to this medicine. Second of all, we tell you there's this awareness that not only people who are in need, but also the vast majority are able to in access know that what this thing is and what its purpose, why is it existing for. So because of these reasons, we face less moral problems because people understand what this thing is and why it is for. And now I'll tell you why it is for. It is for people who have a death that is granted, and you know that they're gonna die in extreme pain. Now, what we want to do is we provide this technology, this medicine with those for those people, for the doctors, for the doctors to provide to them, enable for them to decrease their pain and to die without pain, and so they don't have to go through the process of those. So in this is the purpose that I have reclarified here. So in answering opposition side of their capitalistic argument, it isn't as accessible. It's not like you can buy it in a random store. It is by the government controlling the amount to the hospitals, and the hospitals in recording which one is actually really in need. Those people that are insured that are going to die, definitely. And for them, this is a medicine required for them. It is not like a random medicine that you can buy. And now also, not all medicines are like accessible to all people. You need to have these declines that you are actually having this, you're actually suffering through these, enable for you to have that medicine. And this goes the same with this Sarco Pod. So it won't end into a fact that our opponents is characterizing when telling you that people are like, and all of the harms that they have characterized doesn't exist. For example, like the price of dying and that it won't be paid, people will just want to die because they can't even access these medicines. They're not in a point that they have a death coming soon, and that definitely will be painful. The government is not going to supply them with this thing. So all of those impacts don't exist because of our model. We tell you that this is in supply for the people who are in need, for the people that have a painful death in the future. So we want to save them from these deaths, and this shall not be like illegal. And so our opponents also, it's the opposition side that has the burden to prove to us in why the government have the right to ban something that is actually helping people. And the people here is the stakeholders that are only accessible to the Sarco Pod, which is people who are in a severe death. Like they will be not only dying, definitely, but also taking a long time in suffering with the painful. First of all, they need to suffer with their mental pain. Second of all, yeah, definitely physical pain. And second of all, mental pain because they know that they're going to die future. Third of all, is because of the financial burden that they cost on them in their future death. So this isn't all why the people have all the motivation to do this in the first place. Yes, PY. Wait, sorry, I can't hear you that well. Sorry. Okay, so coming back to my I'm sorry, I can't hear you. So I'll come back to my concluding why let's say CG should be the winning team here. So we've opt out and tell you why. Yes.
Great. I think there needs to be a proper way in on whether the usage of Sarco Pod is the best thing for state to legitimize, because this is state supporting it. When states support these things, they endorse people who want to do this and makes it very easy and accessible to them. Why does state have to do that?
Okay, so this is, yeah, as I have just said, it is the opposition side's burden to, okay, I'll answer it in two aspects. Okay, so first it's the opposition side to prove to us, judge, why is it actually the state, like why do the states have a right to like limit something that can actually save people's life? Second of all, the government does definitely have the incentive to do this because this does good for people. States, what is like why do we have a government? The government needs to do good for people. The government needs to protect people's rights, and one of the right is to choose like their state. Now they're in a painful state and they want to release, and this release does not harm. I'm sorry, so I can't hear you. So, and also this relief comes in no harm for other people. So the government does not have any right to stop them from doing this. This doesn't harm others, and this also doesn't cause any society society moral problem because of the awareness here support that we provide to you. And this is also a point that it can strengthen the government's effectiveness because people can see, let's say politics also have the incentive to do this because people, their voters, their supporters can see that, okay, so this guy is actually helping us in helping those minorities, those vulnerable groups that now want death, but they can't but they're not accessible in a non-painful death. They have to suffer through all I have just mentioned, those years through these. Thus, we tell you here that not only in our side can we save this this minority group from facing those problems, but also we can prove to you why this is beneficial for not only the state but also, let's say, the future development. And also, we come here also and tell you that only in the government side can we reach a point that benefits all stakeholders. So up until now, why will even in our worst case, what we're doing, the state is investing to specifically to those hospitals. Like state is not relying on this to make money. They're relying on this to grow faith within people, and so people they want to grow in support. So this is their motivation in the first place doing this. So they don't have the incentive to earn money through this because the people accessing to it is too small. And Okay, so continually, the state has the right to protect people, and this is also non-proven in opposition side why the government have the right to make it illegal. That it not only should be legalized, but also after legalizing, it can bring all the benefits that I've just proved to all the stakeholders that we have mentioned in this debate. That's
Hello. Yeah. Apologies. I don't know if it's my time problem or there's a 1 minute left. But anyways, thank you for that speech, government whip. Now to yes, the time is to stop right now. Again, just to remind everyone, yeah, just to remind everyone, please maximize your time, 7 minutes and 15 seconds. Now to conclude this debate, may I now call on opposition whip here. Hello, hello, is opposition whip here? Can I get a verbal?
Apologies, I was just fixing up my mic and other stuff. Let me just plan my notes. Before I begin, shout out to my lovely partner, and this is also going to be a call out. I didn't want to make it to semis. I wanted to read for my exams, but here I am. She has carried me till semis and probably carried me till finals. Okay, notes. Oh, for copyright references, kindly type it in chat. I will try my best to take as much as possible. If I don't take no hard feelings, I just have a lot of notes to go through. Yeah. Okay, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So panel from the get-go. No government bench deserves to win this motion. They literally skewed the whole motion to their favor by stating that this is about euthanasia, this is about a vegetable, this is about someone who's at death's door. Well, literally the info slide states clearly, this is literally a suicide machine. We're not coming to talk about freaking someone who's at the death's door and has been suffering from cancer. That doesn't mean that somebody who wants to jump off a building and jump off a bridge doesn't need a suicide machine in the first place. Like, let's be freaking for real for once. It means that now you want to exclusively confine suicide onto stating that it's only needed by those who are vegetative, or let's say those who are in hospital. Then what does it mean when someone who has acute depression jumps off a building? Do you want to say that's suicide, or do you want to say that's maybe a degree or a form of murder? Like, government, be honest for once. I know we are supposed to lie in a debate, but we are also supposed to be sensible in nature. Okay, so I'll start by why we beat OO, because OO deserves a second and we deserve a first. OO analyzes why it's bad for the state to be complicit within the mass deaths of people. But already in CO, we inherently show you why it's bad for states on Gulf side to support the Sarco Pod in its entirety. We literally show you why it creates an improportional preference over death. We literally show you why it increases the likelihood of mass opt-in, because you remove the dissuading power of the lengthiness of death, basically the pain of death. So we concede to OG when they say that euthanasia has some aspects of pain. We do agree to that. But the means now you have the Sarco Pod, an all-kill narrative where it's so painless, it's so cheap, so eco-friendly, it's so green. Literally now ask yourself this. Someone who's stuck in the middle of the extremities, somebody who's not sure if one, they want to kill themselves, or two, they want to live. That's the most vulnerable actor that's currently present, because that's the largest demographic that actually wants to consider suicide. Not the vegetative vegetable that Ted is coming to talk about. Not the person who OG is saying has suffered for cancer for 20 years. Those people already considered to have the minute they had stage 3 cancer. Somebody like me who has faced bullying for tens of years, somebody like me who has been brokenhearted by so many girls, someone like me who's literally on top of a bridge and wants to kill myself, but isn't sure if maybe if I call that hotline, if I call that guidance counselor, that maybe I can find an incentive to actually leave. That's the person who's the most vulnerable actor at this point, and that's the most vulnerable person to actually want to get the Sarco Pod. Why are they the most vulnerable person to get the Sarco Pod? One key thing that both government says that come and propagate it, accessibility and how cheap it is. Okay, now we remember that people are capitalistic in nature. We literally see ADHD medication being pushed to teenagers, stating that no, it's not maybe that you're feeling a bit hyperactive, you're actually mentally sick. We literally see Martin Shkreli doing that with insulin. He's literally coming in overpricing said medicine that's needed by the most vulnerable people. Now, what will happen with the Sarco Pod? Remember, they came in and said that one, we want to make it accessible for everyone. What does this mean? Capitalistic nature and inherent human desire to conquer and want more will make it become subpar in quality, will make it become subpar in human tendency and nature. So the human dignity that they're defending, that someone will die a peaceful and dignified death, won't even happen. Why? Because a company can easily chip out on materials to make sure that you get that quick fix of death in order for me to get like a higher profit margin, in order for me to get like larger stock returns in the future. That's what I'm trying to tell you clearly, that you won't even feel dignified in death in its entirety, because your family will be saying, why did we do this when we could have easily gone for euthanasia, where he could have easily gotten a shot and died peacefully? We put him in a decent coffin instead of getting some plastic ass machine which will literally kill you in a minute, and then that also acts as like your that also acts as your coffin. Like remember, even the family itself will be feeling some sort of inflicted trauma when the dignity of your death isn't even inherently shown. Then we say, why did we even accept one of our kin to be subjugated into this? Then we say, panel, this isn't a good thing. Like we shouldn't even have done it in the first place. They'll be hating themselves. They'll be literally even be needing more mental they'll be even be needing more mental health and psychiatric care in order to make sure they don't fall into the same fate that you fell in. Okay, secondly, why I believe we win is that one, we also have to engage on the nuance of the Sarco Pod, which no government bench of any bench in this house has been able to do, minus CO. Well, CO deserves his win on so many metrics, but I'm going to prove unto you why we even win. It's because one key thing. Sorry, we already show you how like the capitalistic nature and commodification comes into play. What does this mean? They clearly came and said it's going to be eco-friendly. Remember Fukute's own words. It's going to be eco-friendly. It's going to be good for the environment. And they already showed you that capitalistic nature will lead us to chipping out. What does this mean? This means that we'll be green facing or whitewashing the aspect of death. We'll be selling people that what? This is good for the environment compared to normal euthanasia or a normal burial. So basically, what do you mean? It's because it's eco-friendly and cheap. It's good for you. Don't care about the ethical responsibilities or social responsibilities. That's what OG is trying to let you buy. That means that we now greenwash over there and make it a commodity and don't actually care about the ethical responsibility that it has on the individual actor, on the society, and even on the ethics of the doctor at large, and even also considering the social responsibilities that death plays in so many cultures and society panel. Then maybe is when we'll be now commodifying other things. What's next? Will we start commodifying life? Because that's basically what government wants us to do. They want to commodify death to a point where they start being facing it and whitewashing it. So guys, clearly, sorry, I'm losing my voice. So guys, clearly, there's one key thing that we need to consider is that one, we have already shown you that this is going to be detrimental to the society because of the impressionality that it creates, the capitalistic nature that society has at large. How even if we do buy into OO's analysis of the state legitimacy, even though they did a touch and go basis, we have already shown you on the nuance basis. We have already shown you why the state even has a likelihood of, let's say, not allowing this mass opting to happen. We have literally shown you the analysis that they failed to do so. So guys, let me just tell you why we win. One, we have shown you the risk of glamorization of death. It literally goes against the existing mechanisms present to make sure that suicide prevention happens and about mental health. Because remember, this is somebody who's stuck in the middle. This is not someone who's at the extremities that is propagated by both government benches. What does this mean? If this person can be able to find, like, let's say, a hotline to call or to help, a guidance counselor to listen to them, maybe they find a girl who can take one for the team in my case, maybe panel, then and then alone, they'll say, there's actually value in my life. Maybe I have a reason to live on. But if we buy into the aspect of the vegetative nature of that government is trying to propagate panel, then that means we have to recharacterize suicide at large. That means if I jump off a building or jump off a bridge today, it should be classified as murder. It shouldn't be classified as suicide. So panel, no government bench deserves to win this motion. I think whatever I said, I just have to reiterate it to make it clear. The glamorization of death is bad. The disproportionate level of death how it raised people from actually viewing life and death, and how it reduces the mass buy-in for actually governments to cater for societal needs, and actually how it like makes people want to seek death and actually glamorizes it or actually nourish it panel. So then and then alone panel coming from CO, because CO deserves this win because no house in this room has been able to do a credible job. Then and then alone is why I believe we win. With that, I have nothing else to say. If we make it to finals, all the best. To the teams that do, all the best. I'm out.
Thank you for that speech, opposition whip, and thank you to everyone inspiring semi-finalists. Yes, you may now speak out and
Oh, wait. I know
the
they use
two
my
beautiful,
mic.
hold on. For the two beautiful finals, can we go to the deliberation room? Thank you, everyone, and good luck.
Ah, oh, I can't believe tomorrow is school again. School sucks, man. School sucks. Can't they just allow us to be living here just like that?
you.